Hello, everyone, and welcome to Forever Rugby. And some breaking news in South African rugby is that today a meeting was held with 13 different union stuff like that within SA Rugby, and they have unanimously voted for South Africa to basically ditch Super Rugby and immediately continue stepping up conversations to go north with Lions, Sharks, Stormers, Bulls all set to try and join an expanded Pro 14 tournament. So after all these conversations, after all the years where we've been saying maybe we should go north, maybe that's what we should be doing, it is finally actually happening. Or at least it's finally going to be attempted to happen. So yeah, and that's a massive step in for South African rugby, because we've been talking about these conversations casually as fans for many years about how there's so much money in going up north and getting pounds, and it makes so much more sense in terms of time zones. And we need to stop wasting our time playing Super Rugby in Sands, where we generate so much income, but we don't get to see all the benefits of it. And that surely it makes more sense to go north. And today, Saru hosted a meeting, and they voted to actually do it. They have voted that they rejected the first option, which was to keep the Pro 14 format as it is and to explore and to have the four top teams in South Africa, partake in the revised whatever sort of sands of new domestic competition that they create is going to be. Instead, they have said that they are going to try and go north, and the four teams will hopefully become part of a revised Pro 16, Pro 18, or whatever, but a new Pro 14 competition, which is a very, very big step in SA Rugby, because obviously, there's been all these players. I mean, it's sort of the brain drain. Something like all these hundreds of South African players currently overseas playing professional rugby, not even just amateur, playing professional, paid to play. Their livelihood is rugby. There are hundreds of them in Europe, and and the simple thing is money talks. And at this stage, South African rugby cannot afford to pay the players competitive wages and stuff compared to what overseas can. And the only reason that a lot of players are still in South Africa is because obviously they've got Springbok contract and they sort of supplement the income. And to try and curb the whole players don't go overseas, the sort of rugby brain drain, although it's not unique to rugby, it happens in cricket as well. Was the whole sort of a new selection policy where they said that you could not select overseas based players. It's like New Zealand have. Australia has a system where you can only select players from overseas once they've hit, I think it's 30 caps for the Wallabies. And so South African rugby has been playing with various sort of potential models to try and remedy this. And it didn't really work when they said that you couldn't play, because if you think about it, you look at the players that are playing overseas. Your Faf de Klerk, Dwayne Vermeulen was overseas. Francois Louw's been overseas for a long time. Andre Pollard's now overseas. There's just so many top players. Etzebeth is overseas. There's so many of our best players. Malcolm Mark's gone over the Tyron Green. There's so many of our players that would be in the Springboks are currently playing overseas. So it's not feasible to limit Springbok selection to purely South African-based players. However, it's not feasible in terms of earning a living for players to remain in South Africa. So this is a massive step in the right direction, because the revenue boost from going overseas will hopefully mean that the players can be compensated to the extent that they will actually remain at South African franchises. And what this could mean is we can start seeing the best players once again representing South African unions. And what will be very interesting to see is that the Cheetahs have done reasonably well in the Pro 14. They made playoffs in the debut season. They've been quite good. So in theory, the four teams are supposedly much better teams on paper, have better players and stuff like that than the Cheetahs. So in theory, we could actually go on to hopefully dominate the Pro 14. And it'll be really, really cool to start playing against some of the best players in the world. We're going to play against some of the best Welsh players. We're going to play against some of the best French players, some of the best Italian players. So it's going to be a whole different dynamic. And, we no longer have to wake up at 5 in the morning to watch, South Africa take on, the Lions take on the Hurricanes or whatever, So it's goodbye to Super Rugby. And I think, Super Rugby has been watered down over the years with the various expansions. They went up, they went down. They've had, so many issues, and it kind of just died. And the whole COVID-19 pandemic allowed a chance to sort of reset and relook at how this competition is going to work. And to be fair, Super Rugby Aotearoa in New Zealand started, and New Zealand is immediately turned around and said, well, we actually like this. We don't really want to continue Super Rugby. And they said, we're keen to walk away. And then they said, maybe we'll include Australia and we'll just leave out South Africa. So it's good to see South Africa saying, well, if that's the case, that's fine. We actually don't want to be with you. We're going to go north. We're going to stick to our time zone. And we're going to play new, exciting players. And it'll be really cool to have, sort of more tourism coming from the UK coming down. Obviously, got the British and Irish Lions tour next year. Good news, I've got tickets for the British and Irish Lions. So next year, make sure you subscribe to the channel right now so that you don't miss a lot of behind the scenes stuff. Going to be going on tour everywhere. We're going to be following the Lions around. But yeah, so it's going to be really cool to start playing different oppositions. And in terms of what's going to happen to the Cheetahs, we have confirmed that they are going to explore the opportunity of having a team in the new Sands competition, and that will be the Cheetahs. So it'll be interesting to see how the Cheetahs take it, because there was lots of threats about the fact that they had lawyers lined up should they be excluded from Pro 14, which they now have. So some very, very interesting few weeks ahead, as we try and push to be in the next in a revised Pro 14 format. As a Lions fan, I'm absolutely buzzing. I can't wait to go overseas. I hope it means that we can start not only keeping players, but hopefully you can start bringing players back. You can go and say to players, listen, we can actually afford to match, what you're being paid overseas. Come back and play for the Lions. So it's a big boost for South African rugby, and I think it's going to have so many knock-on effects as the months go by. And it's just going to be it'll be very interesting to see quality-wise how it goes. And we're moving towards a situation where we could start playing what was the Heineken Cup and that whole European Championship. We want to see Bulls versus Racing Metro at Loftus. We want to see Stormers taking on Saracens. How amazing would that be? They were supposed to have that whole exhibition match. This could become a regular thing. We could be playing against some of the best players. I want to see Owen, as much as everybody hates him, I want to see the likes of Owen Farrell, Johnny Sexton, Mario Toje playing against our domestic franchises. That's what we dream of. I mean, you think of football and the Champions League and how we get to see the best players in the world playing against each other. Well, we can start seeing that on a domestic level. And I think it's about time that rugby starts catching up to football in terms of the professionalism within club rugby. It's become, within franchise rugby, it's become a lot better overseas, but South Africa was still sort of playing catch up. And hopefully this will mean, expanded tournaments, more money, more commercial gain. And it's time to modernize and to take the next step into becoming 21st century leagues and competition and tournament. It'll hopefully it gives us something new in terms of playing in new conditions, playing in cold conditions and wet conditions. So it gives us that experience that when we go overseas and play in Europe, we're ready for it. And given the fact that there are so many different hosting nations for like World Cups and stuff like that, it's very, very useful to be able to know how to play in South Africa as well as how to play in Europe. Much more so than playing in South Africa and Australia, where conditions are reasonably similar. If you go to New Zealand, it can be a lot wetter, can be a lot colder, etc., etc. But Argentina also fairly similar conditions. So there's just so many positives of us going north, and I'm so excited that they've actually decided to make this decision. And now we wait, and hopefully in a year's time we're going to see Lions versus Scarlets and Leinster and Munster and all these clubs playing against our local franchise, which is going to be really cool. So yeah, make sure you like and subscribe right now. Become part of and follow the channel. Make sure you're part of Forever Sports and Forever Rugby. As I said, so much cool content. Obviously, a preview coming of Springbok Gold versus Springbok Green this weekend. Springbok Rugby is back, and I'm buzzing to see what happens. Some really good squads, very exciting players being named. It was so cool to see rugby back this weekend, and looking forward to the domestic competitions that are following. So make sure you subscribe to the channel for all the latest news. Hit the subscribe button there, share with your friends. We want to try and get a community going. We are for the fans, by the fans, fan cams and all that kind of thing. Podcasts, so much in the works at the moment, so make sure you subscribe so that you don't miss any of that. I hope everyone is keeping very well. Some good news to start the week as we sort of sit there watching the calendar go by until we can watch some rugby and hopefully some international rugby as well with the championship. We'll bring you the latest updates in terms of the decision-making process and what is happening in terms of the Springbok involvement in the rugby championship. That is all for now. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you soon.